Village Council Retreat, February 23rd. Next up, we have item number 11. It's 13, discussion of fund balance analysis. God, I can't even read, including unallocated reserves.
Okay, so I don't know, and it's hard to read the left-hand side of this, but this document was in the packet that was handed out to you all. So this was a document that was created a number of years ago, and the whole point was that we have a fund balance, which is like our savings account, okay? And if you look at, if you have the paper document, if you look at this, you can see that right now, at the end of our June 30, 2017 audit, we had savings of $1,377,949. Okay, what this document does though is it tells you where those funds have been either statutorily restricted or assigned by previous councils. And assigned is less legally binding than like a statutorily restricted one or a committed one, because assigned is just like a previous council's determined or current council's determination of like, these are our goals and this is what we're trying to save for. And it's just a way of kind of,
and we could change that.
You can make changes to that. Yes, most definitely. So if you were to look at this document, non-spendable $900, honestly what that is that's our security deposit on the village hall rent. Restricted by state statute, that's some complicated calculation, but it runs around $30-some thousand for us. Committed fee in lieu. This is one where you all have received fee in lieu money from various developers, and this money can only be spent according to our ordinances, which is for parks and recreation purposes. Okay, so keep that number in mind because I'm going to bring it up later in the meeting when we talk about greenways. Okay, so we'll skip that one for now. Road maintenance. This is one where you guys had started setting aside a very small amount of money for future road maintenance for someday. And in the meantime, we have created a capital project fund for roads, which will include major road resurfacing and maintenance of roads that we have to take over. So my suggestion would be that we make things less complicated and move this road maintenance amount into the capital project budget and just make life less complicated that way. So that was one of the suggestions that I made at the end of the document that we can get to at the end. So the same thing with loop maintenance. We've now created a capital projects budget for loop and greenway trail building and maintenance. I suggest we just take this amount and move it into that capital projects. Signs. This $20,000 has been on the books
Since I came.
Forever. I think, was this in Mark Curtis
thing back in 2006.
Yeah,
Wow.
It's been there forever. The idea was that we were going to do signs,
Sorry.
okay.
Brandon,
something like,
My bad.
sounds official, branding signs. That there's nothing when you're coming down Newtown Road from South Carolina that says you're in Marvin, on Newtown Road that way, on Marvin School Road or Ray Road. There's no points at the different, there's no signs at the different points of in and out of Marvin. So nobody really knows where Marvin starts and ends. There was a group a long time ago that did a bunch of studies, which we probably have stuff on. I don't think anybody could ever agree, and so the money just has been sitting on the books.
Isn't that what you were talking about, branding?
Well, branding's a part of it. I mean, that besides, but I'm thinking as we're maybe reestablishing the design review board, maybe that's something we can throw at them if we were going to continue that on the books. But I mean, how far are we out from signs? I mean, we talked about standardizing even the road signs or some sort of identifier for those Marvin neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Whether on top and stuff like that. So could that money be used for, that's considered a sign, is it not?
Sure, yeah. Or like the signs down in Waxhaw, when you're going down Waxhaw Marvin Road and the sign says like Nesbitt Park that way, and
Yep.
it's got like 3 things on it. I can't remember what they all are, but any kind of signs.
Listen, there's gonna be enough signs with just the roundabouts. If you go look at a roundabout, they're so polluted with signs that it's disgusting, so.
Well, I mean, I think that having some signs to brand Marvin.
Key entrance points, like where the pool, the swim club is, next to the thing, right before you get to the Amber Meadows. Coming up from Waxaw Marvin Road, we discussed that, coming down Marvin Road.
Coming down Newtown Road.
Both Newtown roads, you know, hitting that. I
So
mean,
this would be money that if you all were to decide in the future that you wanted to have, get pricing on that and make it, and start working on that project
Okay,
again.
so we got
This
some
is
money.
money that's set aside, that was intended for that purpose.
but we never did anything on it.
Right,
So I
right.
think,
And we haven't added to it in a
That's
very
right,
long
it's been
time.
$20,000 for
We
10 years.
just put the money there.
okay.
No additional.
We're going to suggest to just kind of remove it, or? do
No,
you-
no,
okay,
no, I just
okay.
said,
It's
well,
just
no,
been-
I wasn't sure whether if you all wanted to keep thinking about signs for the future, then you could leave this here. If you have no intention, then you could use it somewhere else if you needed the funds somewhere else.
Okay.
You're not tied to this. Any current council can move these funds around. Okay, the next one, land acquisition, that one was the one that started many years ago, when Lanny was here, and it was a strategy for building up funds to be able to purchase park land, yes. And so, there is an actual policy, related to that, which, says that, yes, 10% of the annual revenues will go into the savings account. Now, we amended that last year because we had these capital project funds where we were building the village hall and all, and we're like, okay, well, in a year that we have ongoing capital projects, you don't have to put 10% into the savings because you may be using funds to go into your capital projects. But, that's just where that money accumulated from. Last year or 2 years ago, we took $500,000 out of here for the village hall. Previous to that, we had used the money that was in there for the down payment on the park. So that's just,
That's what's left, 364.
right. Currently, this year, there's 364, yes.
None of that is going to road improvements, correct?
Correct,
Okay.
correct. So, and we'll talk about, there's sort of a step 2 of, after I explain these to you. Capital asset replacement, again, it was a small amount of money that was set aside if the server crashed, and we didn't have money in the budget this year or something.
659.
I don't know where it came from. But anyway, it's been there for a while. It's, if we had a fire, if, we had to, again, capital assets, if something happened. If a tree fell on the playground at the park, it would be a little bit of money to go toward that. So that's, again, just sort of a miscellaneous savings. The next one is Loop and Greenway expansion. Currently, there's about 134,000 in that. If you look over to the right, you can see, in the past couple of years, we had moved money for the preserve loop behind us, that section, and the Tullamore work, and a little bit of money for the village hall. We actually took out of this account, leaving the 134,000.
What did we spend $113,000 for Loop and Tullamore?
That was when we first established the capital projects. 65,000 was put into a capital project fund to do the trail that's right behind Village Hall.
We haven't done anything with yet.
Right, but that's on the discussion for trails and greenways later in the agenda. And then 48,000 was to do the Tullamore part. We ended up needing a little bit more for the Tullamore part, and so we pulled it out of here. Okay.
Why looks like we're using 7,000 more?
This year in FY18, we actually had pulled 7,000 through 2 budget amendments because the Tullamore Trail and parking lot ended up costing a little bit more than we had anticipated when we had to do that extra work. So we're done with that, though. There's no more money to go toward that.
And we don't add any money to that every year?
Well, that's what we need to talk about. So that, we'll get to that in a
Okay.
second. Yeah. So that's where that is. Intersection improvements we'll also be talking about, but that is where we've taken money from the roundabouts, for the roundabouts in the past. So when we talk later about the, I actually have a budget amendment on the agenda, the 220 for the third roundabout, 152 was intended to come from here, and then the 67, I'll tell you where that will come from somewhere else. Okay, so that actually is gonna go down to 0. The reserves, this is the question you asked me about earlier, which is how much do we need to kind of save? And generally, they suggest that you save about like 1 month's worth, which would be 8% of your budget. In a reserve, in case something happened, we actually have 13%. So that number is actually pretty good. We pulled 100,000 out of it for Village Hall 2 years ago, but that number's okay. Future capital projects, honestly, that is just a housekeeping issue that probably just needs to get moved into one of the capital project funds. And then you get down to the number that we need to talk about, which is the unassigned number. So at the end of the audit, any excess revenues over expenses, and we actually have 2 years worth. We have almost 43,000 from last year, plus whatever that difference is, 200 and some thousand from this year. This is our excess, which is now up to council to decide what you want to do with it. Do you want to assign it to any specific categories? Do you want to use it? Do you want to move any of it into capital projects budget? Or do you just want to leave it in unassigned for a potential future project yet to be determined?
I mean, if we leave it unassigned, we can
Move it
take it whenever we want, we can move it anywhere we want, whenever we want.
Once you
Yes.
assign it, you can never pull it back out.
No, assignments can always be
You
moved.
pull it back down.
Assignments is sort of like the lowest, well, unassigned is the lowest level, but then right above it is assignments. And that's like the current council's decision, but it's not legally binding. So anyway, so one of the things that we have a budget ordinance amendment for coming up is the extra money we need in intersection improvements to get us from the 152 to the 220, I would recommend coming from unassigned.
67,000.
Right, it's about 67,000. And what you see on page 2 of the, if you want to pull this out, what you see on page 2 is really, it's almost a little bit too early to talk about this, but the intent of page 2 is to talk about where we see extra money coming from in the next couple of years and where you might want to be thinking of putting it. But honestly, the numbers at the top are, at this point, they're very rough guesses, and so this is really just kind of for you to be thinking about. That we can, if you were to make a decision that every year you want to put 10% into roads, what it would do is the 10% would flow from this page up to page 1, and then you could kind of look at where your fund balance is going in the future, like kind of what your projected savings are. Does that make sense?
And that's on the road? You're saying what again?
Which, I'm sorry.
What you just said, that
Okay,
you can move over to.
So you'll see these 3. It's FY 18, 19, and 20. This would kind of be looking out to the future of if you were trying to look at, we know we usually have some excess funds every year that we use to set aside for certain purposes, to help us with roads, to help us with trails, things like that. This second page, when they created it a number of years ago, was intended to kind of be just a pictorial explanation of where future savings might be coming in and what you might be saving towards.
Now, the difference for the jump from 150 to 222, for instance, is that because we no longer have a
Have the debt service.
debt service, right?
Right.
That's annually is about $60-some thousand, is that correct?
It was a
Oh,
little
70.
bit more, but in this year, we paid debt service through February. Remember, so we paid 8 months of debt service this year. Next year, it'll be almost $100,000 that we won't be spending in debt service.
Okay.
So right now, honestly, the point in showing you this was more of an explanation, and I think when we get to the budget amendment, which is next, and then the discussion of roads and loops and greenways, then you might want to move some money around and make some decisions. But right now, this was more of an explanation of where things are and where we stand financially so that you all can know that for making future decisions.
But given what we acted on earlier today, we may need some of those funds just to get,
Right, and there's a few different categories where there are some funds.
being pulled from.
Right.
Okay.
Now, the only other thing that I was going to suggest to you all is there is a policy that was created back in 2015, and it's called fund balance assignments. And it talks about during the annual budget process, the council shall assign excess revenues or expenses to fund balance in accordance with a particular order. This was done before we had the Village Hall capital project, before we had a roads project and a trails and greenways project. It was when we were still saving for those kinds of things, like as opposed to actually purchasing them and doing them. And so it says that your first order of priority would be land acquisition, the 10%. Your second would be reserves. Right now, we honestly know our reserves are good. The third was loop and greenway maintenance, and the fourth was road maintenance. And then it said that those estimates would be done by the village administrator, and then the council would determine them. And so I was wondering whether we still really needed this policy or whether we needed some different version of it going forward, given that we've got these capital projects going on. So it may be something that you all want to just, I don't remember if this went out to you all or not, but maybe you all just think about it, and if you want to talk to me about it one-on-one, we can see if we really need this as it reads going forward.
Would you just recommend to change it or just eliminate it?
I guess it really depends on what your objectives are for saving for the future.
But
I
we're
mean,
already doing that, right?
Right, we're
10%.
doing that, and we are moving forward with loops, and we have a loops capital project budget and a road capital project budget. So it seems to me that
What else?
it's not really necessary, because it
We're already
seems
putting it
that you're actively already doing things.
And we will continue to do that.
But-
Right, and I wouldn't want,
So not to interrupt you, but if you're saying is, do we need to keep this for some other potential capital budget? Now, if I were to suggest that if we get these landowners in here and they want to do a master plan, and they all decide to get together and pay for that master plan, then could we potentially put funding aside to, if we were going to participate? Because technically, well, we are
We could be
landowners.
landowners on two ends.
We could be, which would be more of a, we got bigger skin in the game. So my suggestion may be keep that in case we end up having to participate to some percentage wise.
well, that's fine. I think if I were to change this, what I would do is essentially just make it more simple and say that annually, the village council will review the audited fund balance schedule and determine how to allocate unassigned fund balance.
Okay.
And basically like leave it to that, as opposed to specifying an order of things that you,
Percentage.
and percentages and things like that. This
Okay.
seems to be a little bit more, more directive, as opposed to leaving it up to you all to decide what to do every year and giving you a little bit more leeway.
Okay.
Because I mean, in reality, we do have the ability anyway, even though it says 10%, we can say, well, this should we do 5% or 2% or nothing.
Right.
else.
Right, exactly.
So-
So, I mean, I think a simple one that just said, council shall review it annually, and at least that way you know you're looking at it and you're addressing it, and either taking action or not taking action, as opposed to just ignoring it altogether. But that, we can put that on the March agenda if you want. I can revise it and put it on the agenda and then let you all vote on it then.
Yeah.
And then that gives you a way to think about it.
Yeah, we
Okay.
can look at the current verbiage versus your suggested verbiage.
Okay, I can do that. Okay, so that, unless you had questions, that was all we intended for this particular discussion, because I think the actions you could take actually can be discussed during the other discussions on the agenda, except for one. And that would be, there was talk last year about creating a new savings category that really isn't covered by anything else that we have. And that was a savings for future park improvements. So if we have to replace the
Swing set.
the swing set, the playground, exactly, or if we have to replace the roof on the barn, things that are expensive. And I had given you guys a version 1 and a version 2 of this, and version 2.
Oh, I was like,
Yeah,
I swear I saw it somewhere.
Yeah, the second version dated today actually showed you this with a park improvements line on it.
Yeah.
And that would be my only thing to suggest to you, is that was kind of, the suggestion to do that was made in the past, and this would be a time where you could formalize that if you wanted to add that category.
I mean, it makes sense, we don't want the park to get junky, so.
Right, and if the playground, you know, if it's determined at some point that the playground is unsafe, it's pretty expensive to replace that.
Yeah. And that makes sense.
So that would be the only thing that, if you wanted to take action on today, or again, you can wait till next time.
How are we doing on the bigger ticket items that were bogeys that we wouldn't know? Like, I don't know if this is the right time to ask that question, like for legal and or AMT.
Actually, I am going to finish up my budget to actual. We're actually doing okay. We're doing okay on both of those. Legal, we're a little bit over budget, but like January we were very low, and so we kind of gained some ground again. And engineering, they haven't been doing a whole lot, so but we might be actually reaching out to them more because we have some things coming up. So that may be a discussion for more in a month or two. We're not close yet.
Okay, it's just making me think of something that I don't know if we made a motion to do this or not, but then you started talking about different projects and stuff like that, to talk about anything going forward with Village Hall, where the proposed site is, I think at this point needs to be halted, but we never made a motion on that, because we could still spend monies there because that's what they're gonna, so do we need to?
I think we'd want to not spend any more money or.
Yeah, but we didn't make any direction there.
Oh, we didn't
It
make
was
any
just
direction.
not when
Do you
we were
think
talking
need
about
an
that.
actual direction? I mean, I guess I would be the one doing that, and I kind of know what your direction is.
No, I'm just
now.
thinking of funds, when you said engineering, it right away said, you know, I thought about that, and I'm like, okay, but from what we're doing, the action we've taken earlier.
Well, I guess maybe, unless we make a formal motion that, no further,
Until further notice.
Not authorizing any further,
Expenditure.
expenditures on that other than what we've already.
So is that appropriate
Taking
to
to
do
do
it? Is that appropriate to do it at this time, right now? Then we're talking about budgets and allocating, because, I mean, the money,
Really fit in the topic.
it doesn't really fit in the topic, so.
Well, it fits in the topic that we finished, which was Village Hall. We're done with that one. Can
Right.
we go back to
We
it?
can go back and we can suspend the rules and go back.
Yeah,
But does that make sense?
I mean, because you have a
Right.
category in here.
Because
Village
what's gonna be
Hall.
happening is, they're gonna say, hey, where are you at on this? And she's gonna be like, I clearly didn't get direction yet, so. So, okay, but we'll do that after we're finished up here, then
Okay.
we'll suspend the rules and reopen that.
Okay, so I guess, so that was, like I said, that was just sort of a summary to bring you up to speed, because I know Kim hasn't even seen these ever before, and this is, our annual look at this. And honestly, we'll pull back from this when we talk about roads and trails next, okay? So unless you all have any other questions, that was all I had on this topic.
I think I'm
Good.
okay.
Okay.
Kim?
I'm good.
Okay, all right. So, that's done with consideration,
Do you want to
fund
go
balance,
back?
okay, so we would, I guess I need a motion to suspend the rules and to revisit, discussion of Village Hall, which was item number 5. item number 5 on the agenda. So I need a motion to reopen that discussion.
So moved.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Okay, now I'll need a motion to, at this time, suspend any further spending on anything related to the proposed location that we've identified on Marvin School Road and Newtown Road for the purpose of constructing Village Hall, and suspend any more spending at this time. Need a motion for that?
So moved.
Further discussion? All's in favor? Okay, so we're just covering our bases. Huh?
Okay.
All right.
So the next thing on the agenda, sorry, Joe, this is you.
Yep. Next item is discussion and consideration of Ncdot agreement for Marvin Newtown Road Roundabout.
Okay, so that's me. So that was the agreement, I believe you all had a copy of that in your packets. And that was, we received recently the agreements from DOT, and these are very similar in language to the ones that we had for the resurfacing, where they are giving us all the details about the roundabout at the Marvin Newtown Road intersection, and they are giving us on page 3 a summary of what the costs are, and I believe I had previously sent to you some of the pages that they gave me that came from where this was approved in February up in Raleigh, and our share of 20% of the $1.1 million is $220,000, which is consistent with the number that they had been telling us all along. And so I guess I was looking for direction from council to be able to sign this agreement and to mail them the check, because that is due to them by March 8th.
And then, so what's the difference between the next discussion item?
Okay, so if you-
Consideration of the agreement.
So we need a budget amendment. That is the next item on the agenda.
That we would do after we approve
That we would
this.
do after
Okay.
you approve spending this. I just need the budget amendment.
I thought you would
to
do
move-
the amendment first and then.
I guess they were to spend it first, right?
You gotta make a motion
well,
to
no, I
spend it
guess-
first and then.
I think you had to make a motion to approve the
You
agreement
have to
first.
approve the
Okay.
agreement, and then you
then
can
you'll tell me where to
then you
get it
can
from.
make a
Yes.
motion
All
to
right.
approve the amendment.
Okay, so, that's this.
Mhm.
Which one? Okay,
Mhm.
yeah. They want our money, and they want it now. What's the over-under when this gets completed?
I just want to make a motion to approve transportation improvement project reimbursement agreement for Newtown Road and Marvin Road.
And I think it's
It's a participate project, it's not a reimbursement.
U-6088, it's right at the top.
Project U-6088,
Okay,
North Carolina Department of Transportation.
further discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay.
Now,
I think that's okay.
we'll move into item number 13, which is, go ahead.
Can I just ask a question about that motion? Did you also direct Chris to enter the agreement? I didn't hear that in that motion. Was that
To
part of the motion
approve, she
too?
said to approve I think what the motion was to approve, right?
Motion to approve,
Direct-
but you need to direct
Sign it.
Chris to enter into an agreement.
So we approve the agreement, and then we motion to enter into it.
And
Mhm.
then- all right, so, yeah.
And
That'd be a separate
Yes.
motion then, Nick?
No, you can just go back and amend your original motion to read, approve what you originally approved, and then also direct her to enter the agreement.
So amending a motion to include the, village administrator to enter into agreement with North Carolina DOT.
Tip number U-6088, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and with the formal, adding to the former motion.
Right.
Okay, further discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Now we're discussing consideration budget amendment for the Village of Marvin share, Marvin Newtown Road.
Right. So, as I showed you on the fund balance schedule, there was, and you all, sorry, should have a copy of the budget ordinance amendment in your packet, I believe.
This one? Yeah.
You all have, there's $152,444 currently in an assigned fund balance account called intersection improvements. We have $325,166 in a fund balance account called unassigned, of which I was proposing that you take $67,556 and use that plus the 152, which would equal the 220 that we need to send to DOT, and reallocate those to a budget line item called other public safety, which we would then use as the source of writing the check to pay Ncdot for our share of the cost. And so I guess I just need you all to
Make a motion for that.
make a motion to amend the budget for that. And to, yes.
And just to read that ordinance out, ordinance 2018-0201, an ordinance amending the budget ordinance and appropriating fund balance. We'll need a motion for that? Or did I just do it?
I'll make a motion to
Just wanted to distribute
amend
it.
ordinance 2018-02-01, an ordinance amending the budget ordinance and appropriating fund balance
Moving funds from
from
assigned,
30030
unassigned.
fund balance unassigned to 5501 other public safety. And moving 30019 fund balance assigned intersection improvements to 5501 other public safety
To include a total of $220,000
for a total of $220,000.
in 5501.
501.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Awesome job.
Thank you.
Further discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
All right, moving right along. Number 14, discussing consideration of long-range capital projects planning.
Okay.
Roads, loops, and trails. We'll start with the roads, I guess, since Derek is not right here at this time.
So one of the other things that I gave you all, I did not hand out this roads document until today. So this is all in the packet that you have with the AMT on the top, okay? What I did give you in your roads, in your packet earlier was this capital projects. Okay? And what that is just so you all know, is that is a summary of all the current ongoing capital projects that we have. And it tells you when the money was put into that capital project and what it was for. Okay, so you can see everything that we have going on right now. For the purpose of talking about roads, so far we've put $457,000 into the capital project.
Is this from this that you sent? I'm sorry.
No, it's the
Actually-
last page of your,
Oh, it's the last page of what I was in. Okay.
yes.
All right, I thought it was,
But then actually,
what page is, okay, I got it.
And then,
so this would be a summary if you wanted to see what everything we have going on right now, Village of Marvin, open capital projects. And remember, a capital project stays open until you all close it. It doesn't end with your fiscal year. The whole point of this is for things like roads that go on for year after year.
Right, just the 457,000, is that including Powerball funds?
Yes.
So
Yes.
not all of that is technically
operations.
movable, or,
Well, some of it could be used for Greenway trails.
I'm saying,
Right, but it needs to stay there, yes. So now, in your packet that you have with the AMT letter up on the front of it, that is a copy of the road inventory that AMT gave us, as well as the road condition assessment that they did.
This is the ratings, right?
Right, and actually what the first page is, in there, behind the, let's see. Yes, that page right there, I added that, that's probably something that you haven't seen before. That is a, sort of summary of the number of miles by neighborhood of our roads.
Is this the sheet you're talking about?
No, it looks
Or is
like,
it this one?
nope, it's actually this one. It was
Oh,
part
it's
of
on
this
the part of the
document.
letter. Okay.
Yeah,
I
it's
just
right
wanted-
behind the two-page letter, it's actually
Right.
page 3. And that was just more for your information, Ron had asked me about that. And so this was a summary from AMT's document of the number of miles in each neighborhood. The blank at the bottom is actually just a few random roads that are not part of a neighborhood.
So non-state roads.
Sedgefield isn't in Marvin, though,
Yes,
is it?
it is, one little section of it. I don't know if it's the whole neighborhood. It may be just one section.
That's the gated,
Mhm.
I didn't think they were in Marvin.
I think a couple houses may, well, 0.61 worth of roads.
Okay.
Right, so yes, the left-hand side is state roads in Marvin and the right-hand side is the non-state roads in Marvin. And so
So
this,
non-state are not necessarily private, it just may haven't been converted yet.
They could be ours, like the preserve, I'm assuming is ours, right?
right, the preserve will be ours when they turn it over to us.
Tullamore's ours.
Mm-hmm.
Woodville
Win,
is ours.
Woodcliff, yes, and Winmore. Mhm.
So,
What's
this is
the,
my question.
what's the gated community down on
They're all farms. That's not on here.
not on?
So,
Marvin, though.
where
Oh,
are the
interesting.
rest
Maybe
of the
'cause it's gated,
roads?
They have to own it.
Well, you
Yeah,
know,
it would
that's
be a non-
interesting
it would
that
be a
it's not on
non-state
here.
road. But they're definitely ours, they're all farms.
You're right, they are, and you know what, they weren't on this engineer list.
Providence, Glen on here, yeah.
Yes, I'll ask about that. And, there are the two that are not on here yet are Broadmoor and Barcroft, because they were both newer than this
Courtyards in Marvin isn't on here either.
courtyards. No, so that must have been another newer one. So this is all that was on there as of when they did the report, which was May 2016.
There were farms definitely in Marvin then.
So this we used, this kind of goes into this other schedule that was in your packet, which was is there a big document in your packet? Let's see, it's with the, where did that go?
Is it
Those
this one?
11 by 17? Yes. Oh, they're
Oh, there
full.
it is.
Okay,
It's like this.
okay,
Oh, that's fancy.
yes. You should each have that. One second, please. Okay, so this was a document that I put together and then Ron and I talked through yesterday to make sure that I understood everything he understood about roads, since a lot of this was done before I was here. But my objective here was to show you all, for the next 20 years, a plan for what you all would be putting into the road fund and what you would be spending out of the road fund. The line across the top that's in red starts with, under actual FY18, the 6.137 miles. That's the money that we just paid to Ncdot for the 3 neighborhoods. And if you look on page 2, you can see at the bottom where I show you it's Canterfield, Oakbrook, and Weddington Chase. It shows you, this is where all the neighborhoods are. So they're grayed out because they're in actual. And like down at the bottom, what it shows you is there's a line right above Canterfield called placeholder. And that would be, Ron said the idea was to do 1.5 miles of roads a year, or at least that's what we should put into the projection. It could be more in 1 year and less in another year, but that was the idea, to get through all of the roads by the end of 20 years.
But I thought we talked about, when we do roads, we do them as a whole neighborhood and not just by
Yes.
1.5. So-
Right, but what council needs to do at some point is determine what the next neighborhoods are going to be.
Well, I thought that's automatically determined by the
The
rating.
ratings.
We don't, that was supposed to be removed from us.
The engineer's supposed to tell us.
Engineer's supposed to.
Okay, so then the
write us.
engineer, so we would be going to the engineer saying,
Yes.
tell us which roads are next, okay? Yes, so if he came back to us and that's why I'm saying the 1.5 miles a year was to get us through 20 years based on what I knew when I was putting this together, so that gets us to the approximately 36 miles in 20 years by
Just a quick question.
2038.
Where did the 20-year number come from?
that's.
I think it was mentioned, I don't know if it was ever ratified, if you will, but I think it was mentioned that was, you don't do it all at once, you do it over 15, 20 years, so they used, and I don't know if we ever got specific. Again, it goes back to properly vetting this whole process about getting into the road business, how you're gonna do it, what's the timeline, do we have the funding that goes to it? Do we even know what it's gonna cost? I mean.
Well, I'm saying, because 20 years, you got neighborhoods where people that'll be, so fiscal year 38. I mean, it's
Well, right,
a long time for somebody to be
Well,
paying.
again, that's why I'd like to shrink that, but we're in the road business now, so let's.
so this was putting it out 20 years and showing you the funding of what that looks like. If you wanted to shrink that to a shorter time, we'd have to relook at the funding and figure out how we were gonna do that. Okay, so if you follow along this, what you would see back on page 1 was that starting in FY19.
Let me ask you this, and not, but it is in relation to this, and I understand putting it into a fund to repair, or to basically resurface or whatever it is that they're doing to get them up to snuff. But should we not also be putting every year a certain allotment for those situations that pop up on roads that we own?
Yes,
That we have to,
and we have that.
Yeah.
okay, good, okay.
Okay, so if you look at the lines, the first line is again, and this was again based on my discussion with Ron about how it was explained to me that this is supposed to work, is that starting next year, once the loan is paid off, that there would be funding from the loan plus operations to put $200,000 a year, and that's
With
again.
Powell bill funds included?
No, Powell bill is the next line
Oh,
below
okay.
that. Okay, so there'd be $200,000 plus 137 from Powell bill. And every year Powell bill will go up slightly, and those aren't exact numbers, it's just
Just
a
estimated.
slight estimate of how much you'd be getting, because as we take on more roads, we'll get more Powell bill money.
So I think the answer to your question, Nick, is, and Ron, one councilman, working with Chris, basically explaining to her how to figure this out when it wasn't necessarily coming from the whole council?
Well,
Or was it
I was
received
putting this
directed?
together, trying to pull together what I could find
Right.
in the documents that were available to me. And then Ron looked at it with me and told me where my understanding may have been wrong or different or whatever. And so I made some adjustments, and then it's coming to you all for your input in this. So this is again just a document for you all to see what it looks like, and then to give me direction on, or to use this as a tool for moving forward.
I mean, we're
Okay,
doing,
that's what it really is. It's a tool to see. So if you keep moving on this, what you would see is, if you skip down to like the line that's in yellow, it says create reserves. I guess there's two things. One is creating reserves for future resurfacing. there was a document I found that said they talked to 2 other towns, I think Stallings and Indian Trail, and this was back a few years ago, where they were suggesting that they would set aside $5,000 a year to go to future resurfacing and $5,000 a year to go to maintenance types. This right now shows you $2,000 a year per mile for the future resurfacing. The maintenance question that you're asking, Joe, is down here. There's 2 lines under the funds used. There's the resurfacing line, which is estimating the cost at $150,000 per mile with a slight increase every year for inflation. And then the next line, which would be what our maintenance costs could possibly be for potholes and different things like that.
And if those those aren't used up, they just stay in that fund and just accumulate?
Well, right. So this would be the potential use of the revenues you're putting in. So yes, if you don't spend all this next year, it would mean you'd have more in the pot to spend in a future year. And if the maintenance costs don't end up being at all any of this, then you'd have more in the pot to start over in year 20 of resurfacing. But again, the 20-year plan was a start to show you all
Right.
what it would look like over. It didn't seem right to just do 5 years because this project is bigger than 5 years, so I went out to 20 years.
And
Again,
I think
you all
that
can make
keeping the
whatever
tax
changes
rate
you
at the
want.
same level without, I mean,
Right.
the more we shrink it down to the closer, I mean, 20 years, I'm not excited about it, especially if I see on the list that I'm all the way down there. I'm never going to get my roads done. But technically, it would still be, correct me if I'm wrong, the state's road
Until you
until
take
we
them over.
convert it, which they would ultimately be responsible for something, but again, they can't get to it.
Not gonna resurface.
So,
Well,
but they can
that-
repair it.
Yeah.
Well, that was the other thing that Ron told me when we talked about yesterday, which is, I wish he was here. He said that the 150,000 per mile in the resurfacing cost is more than what we're spending on the 3 neighborhoods that we're doing right now. But that was just an estimate, that was a higher estimate. But he said that the anticipation was that the engineer would be working with Ncdot on a yearly basis to negotiate deals like that every year. So this is like almost like a worst case of what it would cost us. I mean, if you all want to, you could direct me to get back with the engineer again, and we could go through this with the engineer and see what their discussions are. But honestly, that was all done before I was involved.
Yeah, the question I would have for the engineer is what's on our list of things to get done. Is resurfacing required? Or can we consider maintaining the roads that go into a neighborhood and say, well, you know what, this doesn't really need resurface, which the cost would be here, versus patching and fixing, and let's get on to some other roads that really need it, that are clearly potentially in worse condition if it is a state-owned road right now that's being turned over. So that would be my question, and I'd love to hear his answer on that, because I think that's what, you just assume you're going to resurface, but do you have to? I mean, some of these roads may be, certainly the ones that we're allowing that's going to go in on the new ones, it's a new standard, so we're assuming we're going to get longer lifespan out of those, but there may be some roads that we can just go in and patch and repair versus going through a whole undertaking of resurfacing.
Why are we only doing 1.5 miles the next 20 years when we did 6.137
It's part of the negotiation, I think.
this year?
Well, again, I don't know that, I have not heard that there's any additional negotiation for the next round. That would be something that I'd have to get with the engineer to talk to him about, to say, okay, what's round 2 and how many miles is that? So the 1.5 miles was really, again, just a number to put in here because I don't know. I mean, I could have put 5 miles in and we could have done it sooner. And I can make those changes if you like.
But
Well, I mean, if we're looking, sorry, Joe, if we're
That's fine.
looking at how much we're spending for what we're doing this year,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously next year can change with what the state's
Mm-hmm.
willing to pony up, but why wouldn't we wanna be a little more aggressive and
I think the answer to that was when we just had one neighborhood on there and we got no bids, or we got one bid or no bids, then they pulled in some other
It's
neighborhoods.
probably still gonna continue that way if we've got.
It potentially could, we don't know, but I still am of the belief that somehow DOT needs to spend some money. I think they're sitting on a bunch of money that whether it's where it's going to, and I think that's why you're seeing that change. But I think us tagging along with whatever they're doing, and it was just part of the negotiation, and that supposedly was the next neighborhood, and combining all those three neighborhoods was part of the total negotiation. I think that's where,
I mean, I'd
but I
like,
don't know if we can do 6 miles over here.
I don't know that we can either, but I don't know if we can't. So I'd like to find that, I mean, I don't know who can tell us that, whether it's the engineer, whether it's the engineer and DOT together.
Well,
Um,
and the person at the engineer who is working on this for us, I think used to be with Ncdot, so I think he's the one who's been working on this. So I can ask him about that. So the question is exactly,
Is,
Can we be more
Can we
aggressive?
accelerate this?
Accelerate
yeah,
this.
and what can DOT partner with us to do
Yeah.
as they're doing this year? I mean, because, I mean, doing a mile and a half, you're gonna have
Take forever, 20 years.
Well, it's gonna take forever, and then
Right.
you're gonna have like, it's gonna take 4 or 5 years for Marvin Creek to get done, and, you know, it's,
right, and again.
I'd rather.
And
make
again,
that-
it goes back to, do you really need to resurface, or there's another,
Well,
just
and
overlay
as you
versus-
take over more roads, you get more in Cowbell. Now, probably not enough to cover
No,
the difference, but you're getting more, so,
Right,
and then we can be
Yeah.
okay.
But-
done with this.
I mean, really, the amount you pick up in mileage is very minimal.
Okay.
It's like, I think
It's-
it's on another page that I have, it's
Yeah.
like $1,600 a
For
mile. For
Oh,
every
is that
mile
right?
that
What
you
you,
take
what you
over.
really get is the population.
Right,
Okay.
Per person, you get
Okay.
like
more, yeah, 25% of it is roads and 75% is
75%
population, but our population's not growing.
not growing. If you had-
Oh,
So,
but it's, oh,
so there's a
So
document
we all of a
actually,
sudden got 10,000 more people, we get another 100, $200,000.
okay, I got it.
right, there's a document that, was in the files, but I haven't actually, I didn't pass it out to y'all because I, found it yesterday and I didn't have time to determine how accurate it was, but it basically showed like how much, as we took on, like if we took on a mile a year, like what that would do to Powell. So that's kind of why I was showing the Powell, like increasing $2,000 a year, it was,
Yeah.
that is,
If you took all 26 miles, it would
It
bring up
would-
about another
right,
I got it.
$40,000.
right. And again, this was intended to show you all like where we are now and what it could look like, and then you all tell me how you wanna change this, and then we can,
I mean,
I can get
I
direction on what questions to ask and what you all want me to do.
mean, I'd like
Well,
to.
I guess, yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I was just, what I said
Mhm.
earlier.
I
Okay.
guess I wouldn't mind seeing projections, as far as cost projections, if we did it in 15 years, if we did it in 10 years, because that would be
Okay.
things we'd have to then look at and say,
Okay.
we'll be able to do
I
that
don't-
with the tax structure.
I don't think we do it any sooner than 10.
I was gonna say, I don't think 5 is realistic, but
No, probably not.
but I would love to have it done before 20.
Okay,
Yeah.
Well,
Probably the residents would too.
Like I said, part of that'll be, if we, like Marvin Creek, where it's,
there's Marvin
It's
Creek.
7.
6.45 miles.
6.45 miles. I think when I looked at the sheet, Marvin Creek, most of them roads are 90 and above.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that might be one way you could say, well, do these two and we'll take, and Marvin Creek, and they only have to do minimal work on Marvin Creek.
right.
Right, if
where it
that's
might-
an option,
it might
yeah.
not, you
And do an overlay versus
Give them an option
a-
of taking, we'll take one that
resurface.
doesn't really require a lot of.
either a patch, an overlay versus a
Yeah,
resurface.
and not just Marvin Creek, but any of them,
Yeah, based on the rating.
part of the negotiations,
Right.
or taking one of the one of the newer developments like the reserve or something. So we'll
Yeah, I think
throw that in, because that's gonna be minimal.
Well, and I think something like the preserve, I mean, that, it's my understanding that we get those roads now, that Ncdot isn't taking new neighborhood roads.
Right.
Well,
So they're gonna,
that one they still have to. I think the ones that they don't have to take are any ones that were approved after the thing, so I think
After we got into Powell.
maybe Broadmoor, maybe,
Because they listed that on a non-state road, so I thought that was when we had to take.
well, it's not state because right now
They
it's
haven't
been
approved it.
dedicated.
Dedicated.
Okay,
But once.
So you
but I
think that
I'm
will be a
pretty
state
su-
road?
I'm pretty sure it will be.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that will, Tullamore, even though it's still not done.
Okay.
I mean,
so it's on that list because it hadn't been turned over from the developer
yeah, I'm
yet?
pretty sure that's what it is, but
Okay.
I think like Broadmoor and
Barcroft.
Barcroft will be ours.
Okay.
No, that will definitely
And
be
that may be, okay, so I guess the only other thing I would point out to you is that again, these were, best guesses.
Yeah.
And doing it this way, you can see in the upper line, I mean, by putting money from operations and money from Powell Bill every year and creating a reserve, so putting a little bit of extra money to set aside for like a savings account, we would ultimately, over 20 years, if you looked at it, put in $8.5 million. But the cost-wise, getting through our 36 miles, as well as probably a high estimate of what maintenance costs would be about $8 million. So we would end the project with like $550,000 to sort of start over again the next year and continue to maintain roads and things like that. So it wasn't, so it was to show you
Year
that-
21, you mean?
Yes,
Yeah.
so it was to show you that with this model, it wasn't ending up with a loss,
Right.
but it was definitely something that was fundable. Now, again,
Theoretically, that the roads last 20 years, so they'd have to restart back, 20
right,
years.
and that's what the estimate was, from what I saw in the documents that I found, was that you would estimate resurfacing every 20 years.
I think Bjorn's comment was you're lucky to get 20 years on a road, so we
Well,
could be in
I
situations
mean,
where roads are failing.
I mean, I hope we think so, maybe people think so, but I can't imagine we'd still be at 5 cents 20 years from now.
Yeah.
I'm sure our
Once we
priorities will change a
take
little.
in all the roads, like that are in the, when they're all Marvin, do we still get Powellville funds
Yes.
to maintain them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So are there any other questions about this, that you would like me to go to the engineer with? Because I guess this would be,
I guess
Okay.
the main one would be what's phase 2? What's our-
right, what's next?
Yeah, what does he see next? Because
Okay.
we're supposed to keep the,
Yeah, we don't want to be involved in picking
Right.
Okay.
neighborhoods.
otherwise I vote for my neighbor.
Okay, so I will talk to him about that. And then, the one other thing that I had suggested, again, just to clean up the, fund balance, was we've got $29,875 sitting in road maintenance. If you all are agreeable, I can create a budget amendment for next month at the meeting to move that into this capital project fund, just to get it, just to consolidate all the
Where's
road
that
funds
from?
and put them all. It's sitting in a fund balance account and it's not in the capital project, and we can just consolidate it and put all the road money in one place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll do that for March.
Okay.
Okay, and then that was all I had on roads.
Let me know when you meet with him.
Okay, would you like this?
Why not? One of
Okay.
us, maybe two. Maybe my family.
Okay,
All right, I'm getting slap happy here. I can see the end.
yeah,
So no offense there, but don't, you got a whole hour to talk and we'll still be in, but I don't want you to take that much time. No, I'm just kidding. Are we good, Chris? Okay.
that one.
Council, assume we're good, so we'll move on to 16B, which is loop trails in Greenway. Derek.
Okay, I guess I would say you all have another document, and it's the one that is, the long 8.5 by 14 document.
That's this one.
Also- Yep, I'll also put on here, yes. So, Derek, could I start with an overview and then you chime in? Okay, so, back a few months ago, Derek and Mary Syke from the PRG and I sat down together and went through, a lot of old documents. There was a 5-year plan that had been out there, but there were various versions of it, and we never really knew what the right version was. And it was my understanding from Mary that PRG was a little bit confused about what council's priorities were. And so they wanted to hear what council's priorities were, and they also kind of wanted an updated revised plan to go forward that they could be working off of. So I sat down and pulled this together, and then Derek and I sat down and spent time going over it the other day. It looks, the first two lines at the top would be funding for, the first line would be ongoing maintenance, and that is a cost that we don't know the answer to, but as we are creating building trails, such as the Tullamore Trail or even sections of the loop and all, having something in the budget for just regular maintenance, spraying for poison ivy and cutting down branches, that
Weed whacking.
things like that. And Derek and I talked about a possibility, could be to hire a landscaper to ride all the things that we own quarterly and to just make sure there's no safety issues out there and things like that. Or, if we had a way to move it around, an ATV vehicle, but we don't have a trailer, but then, park staff could do that, right? So that was something that needs to be considered. And then the next thing was, we had a study done by the engineer a few years ago to repair some sections of the loop. He did like a 5-year study of, and it was a total of $45,000. We've set some money aside for that, but we've not actually done it. And so Derek was saying that Tarpon Construction had actually constructed some of the trails and done some repairs on the trails, and we wondered whether we could put them under contract to do the repairs as needed, to maybe relook at them and make sure there's no safety issues out there. So those are the first two things with some timing. And then the next section is Village of Marvin responsibility years 1 through 5, starting this year. And so the first one is Tullamore Phase 1 and parking lot, which is done. It was about $53,000, that's a round number, but that's done. And so then it would be talking to council about what your priorities are in this year 1 through 5 section. We put some, priority 1 was something that we had come up with, Mary. We had actually come up with like a 1 through 3 year, a 3 through 5 year, and then an after 5 year. And so priority 1 was in the 1 through 3 year. And this would be putting dates to those priorities. So like Amber Meadows, Derek got an estimate from the trail builder of about $18,000, 17 something, to do that work. I think the next step is to go to, for Kim and Robert, we're gonna go to the developer, so we need to get with you all on that, because this estimate just came in, to go and talk to them about that.
That's 18,000 to bring it to basically Tullamore's
Right,
Yeah.
right there.
Standard.
level.
Where is that at? Amber Meadows?
Yes, to bring it to its normal level.
So didn't we talk about in one of the last meetings to go and do another little test?
That's
They
Okay,
did.
so that's what they did.
That's where this
Okay.
number came from, right?
Okay, so that's.
And we did go out there and try and look at documents and could not find anything other than basically like a natural mulch trail. We didn't
It's
find
not a
any
natural
other
mulch trail.
specifications.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, just to have anyone go try and walk it.
Okay.
So that seemed to be, we put that next because that seemed to be a high priority. The next one, you guys actually, we have a capital project budget, and I guess I should point out that if you look under the funding section, there's like fund balance, which is where we would take money from savings, a current capital project budget, or if we needed money from the general fund. So we sort of were trying to identify where the money would come from this.
So we already have this money
We already
in
did it 65,000.
Yes, we have 65,000.
for
Derek-
loops.
No,
Or
for
specifically this one.
specifically for this
Behind
trail
us.
behind
Okay.
Town Hall, which Derek said PRG's calling the Town Hall Trail. Okay, and that estimate is about $30,000 plus we'll need surveying costs. And there are some wetlands area in there. And Derek, do you want to talk about our meeting yesterday with the people from Toll Brothers? I think you understand that well.
Oh gosh. From what angle?
Well, I guess there's, at the end over there, between us and Preserve 4, there's like a whole area of like wetlands and all, and the initial budget had anticipated putting bridges and boardwalks over that area.
Everybody see
Here.
I can get out.
Hold it over here.
So this is what we're calling the Town Hall Trail and / the Preserve Trail. So the recorded easements show an access off of Golden Bell, which is Preserve Section 4, crossing the stream, and then a Greenway easement running behind the current Town Hall property, and then out to the future roundabout at Marvin School Road. So we think that this one should be first as a priority. This is the one that has been price quoted for roughly 2,600 linear feet. Then connected to this, not shown, but in between the Innisbrook and the Preserve property is an easement that goes this way and lands in the middle of the preserve.
It's a completely internal trail to the
So
preserve.
it's not what, remember that it looks like in front of where the section 4 of it was, where it almost looks like you have a meandering path and it just dead ends.
Oh yeah,
We
that's
didn't
at
know what
that's
was-
at the street then.
Yeah,
This is
I know,
behind
but
it.
there was an original plan, that's what you're talking about that you showed me the other day, where it went internal, we didn't know, there was
That was the
somebody,
internal.
somebody knows about, so that, it was
Mhm.
all from the beginning. Now, was there an exchange that we were gonna take care of this for in lieu of the, whatever, the land they gave us?
No, I never saw it written that way. What I was able to find out was that at the time you all were approving developments, it was similar to the trail that's in Tullamore. It was an internal trail that we were paying for, and at the time, we were not asking developers to pay for them.
Okay. But that services a couple neighborhoods, I think. One that doesn't have the HOA, which would be, I think, Robert's neighborhood and Kim's neighborhood, Innisbrook, and Tullamore, because they would have
Once
access to
that's
that.
all, they would
Yeah.
have access off the street. You know,
Okay.
they could walk on the sidewalk on Marvin Road, go down the street, go through the trail that we're building there, and then go walk on all
Okay.
that.
That's
We're building the trail.
It's our responsibility to
Toll
build
Brothers
that trail.
didn't?
No.
Huh.
That's the catch.
Mhm.
So we moved this portion kind of lower on the priority list.
Mhm.
And there's some discussion with Toll Brothers as to what they want to do here. Do they want to possibly put a access point through this
Why-
HOA maintain, what do they call it, common
Yeah, they said there's a common easement
common
or
easement to the
between two houses there.
to the retention
And what do they
line.
want to do?
They want to potentially give their residents an access point to this trail to make
To
these
connect
two
the two.
feel connected, like they're not isolated over there. So there's a possibility that they may, maybe contribute to this. They couldn't promise anything, but
Right, but we sort of
You know,
started the
if we
discussion
would-
yesterday with them about that.
We obligated to the trail.
Yes. It's my understanding. It's, there's, that's the way it was approved. We could continue to do research, but everything I found shows that,
and Toll Brothers believes we are
Yes.
that it was marketed.
mhm,
Their neighborhood was
Which
marketed
portion,
that way.
both?
both.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the only portion you're talking about right now is, this is the priority.
Right, this one.
I'm saying this is a priority one. They've got
Mhm.
some neighborhood to finish. Then we could,
So when we look,
we'll solidify the research, confirm everything, but we could potentially be on the hook for this one too.
What's the estimate per foot?
I mean, I think if you look at the math,
It's about $8 or $9.
It's $8.50 to $9 per linear foot. So I mean, like
At how wide?
1,300 linear feet comes out to like almost $13,000. 1,785 comes out to, you know, almost 18,000.
How wide do-
A 4-foot wide path.
And that's similar to what we're doing in
Is
the
it the exact
preserve?
same that we're doing in Tullamore?
Tullamore?
That's what
Be
I'm
the
sorry.
exact same.
It's a natural trail,
Yeah.
and we are responsible for maintenance on it.
But this is kind of designed to be as low maintenance as, it's almost like ground up concrete.
Yeah. I mean, it's
I don't know
about
what-
as low
I don't know what
maintenance
it's
as you can get.
But you know, it's interesting, I mean, we get better and better when we have these, and now we're almost all built out, so, but every time we have a new development, we're putting in more to take it off of us. And then who maintains it too, that's the other thing, I mean,
Well,
we're,
we do.
you're right.
My thoughts were pending the finalized town hall plans, where that's gonna go, and, you know, the design and whatnot, that we build the town hall trail up to the crossing of Golden Bell, or do we go ahead and connect it to Golden Bell? I couldn't remember.
No, I think we were gonna end it before that.
Before that, and
Right.
let the Army
And to
Corps.
try and to sort of at the same time be working with Toll Brothers to figure out what they wanted to do, because they're talking about how they might need to bring in the Army Corps of Engineers to cross some of the wetlands. So we were gonna talk to our trail building guy a little bit more about that, and then wait to see what their land people are saying about that, but have a stopping point, and then make that other part be part of the phase 2.
Yeah. And
We're not gonna be responsible for building the bridges and everything on
That's part of the original estimates, is bridges and boardwalks over the wetlands.
And then take it that way up to the property on the corner.
So, I'm just thinking as we, assuming that we are, responsible for all this stuff, and when it gets completed, it looks like it, it's part of the connectivity between all neighborhoods, but then it dumps out on streets. Do we have, or you guys thought of anything about, we talked about signage earlier, is like small signs that point to, because you'll find yourself, my thought would be, find yourself onto a road, and then where do you go from there?
Well, actually.
Is there a directive through small signs, or is there a plan?
Yes, part of the memos that I found, the planner memos about final plat approval for those neighborhoods, one of the things that specifically mentioned that there would be, here it is,
Directives through signage?
that there would be a Village of Marvin trailhead sign installed.
Okay, so once you get to that actual cul-de-sac or road that you're out on, then somehow there's gonna have to be some sort of directional, so you're gonna go on a road for a little bit and then get back on, is my understanding, right? Okay, it's part of signage, I guess.
it. Probably gonna have a parking lot there, I don't wanna go parking.
Well, I asked about that, and there is not. So, they said the one
I don't
end
wanna
of
get
that
into parking
trail
lots anymore.
is a little pocket park, and the other end is the cul-de-sac. So, yeah, other than, for example, if you were riding your bike around the whole loop, you could go through their roads to connect to it, but you'd be on their roads, which they said, well, they're public roads, so that would be fine with them. Right?
Yeah, I think, if parking ever becomes an issue, parking is advertised at town hall and at the school, and whatever happens with the property on the corner, and we have the Tullamore parking lot. So I think there's parking options out there where I don't think people are gonna be parking on Golden Bell.
Yeah, I don't see it, because it's supposed to be a walkable trail, so why would you
Yeah.
drive to be walkable, and the idea is to be
Yeah.
I mean,
in
the
the
only
neighborhood.
thing with a bike, I mean, some
Oh,
some
yeah.
people drive
But
and
you-
bring their bikes,
Yeah.
but.
I think the benefit to this, even though it's gonna be a huge investment, is it works to complete the loop, or complete it as much as possible, but depending on, what happens between here and there, it can provide a lot of connectivity to a destination.
Right.
You know, and a lot of the research now is saying your greenways and trails aren't so much focused this way, but they're focused on a destination.
Yeah.
You know, so.
So I guess we had said this town hall, what we're calling this town hall trail back here would be the next priority, but as Derek said, the preserve trail, which is what we're calling the one that's internal to the preserve, is, you'll see it's further down in phase one, because we don't know, we're not even sure how long that is, we don't know what the cost is, so we need to do some estimating on that.
Do we have a time that we're obligated at by the time?
No, and
When they're done with development, 6
No.
months after they're done, we have to have it in?
They
No, and
specifically
confirmed no
said-
expectation.
Yeah, I wrote down on there, they specifically said the how, when, and all is all dependent on the Village of Marvin. That is what they're telling their people. They've not given them, that buy homes in there, they're not giving them any time frame.
Whatever we signed, or the agreement we have with them doesn't say,
Um,
when their build out is done, we have a year or 2 years or 6 years.
Nothing that we've been able to see, and Toll Brothers, who we've talked to, doesn't believe there's a time frame either.
Okay.
So.
We could sit on it and hope nothing happens, or we could have, 20 residents banging
Right.
on the door demanding for a trail that was promised to them, and, we don't know.
So we put it at the end of our phase one, which was 1 to 3 years, not knowing where you all wanted to put it. So if you go back up to Town Hall Trail, the next trail that we said would be the Tullamore Phase 2, which would be connecting the Tullamore Phase 1 and going the rest of the way into there, because again, that's something that they're expecting us to finish. And then the one after that,
Yeah, but Tullamore Trail has no connectivity to anything else.
No,
no,
Doesn't connect to, anyway.
Well,
Well,
Yes
it kind
and
of gets you
no.
over to
The
Marvin
road.
Creek.
Which is a private trail.
Or
Right.
the sidewalks and.
sidewalks.
right.
But I mean, actually, Marvin Creek's trail is owned by the HOA, it's not,
Right.
it's not a public trail.
I mean, it gets you to the sidewalks
Yeah,
Yeah,
good luck
get you
enforcing that.
or the roads in Canterfield. I mean, if you go through, I mean, lots of people cut through the soccer field there and then just walk the roads.
To cross over.
Again, this
To
was,
Marvin Creek with the path around
yes.
the exterior.
Mhm. So honestly, we just put this on here for you all. You can reorganize this however you want, but we started something for you to work from. So after Tullamore Phase 2, the next one that we've heard about from PRG is the Innisbrook Marvin Road Trail, which would connect from the sidewalk that Preserve Phase 4 did in front of Innisbrook. But what we didn't know, Derek and I, was whether anybody with the village ever worked on getting easements across that little
Small
house
house.
that's there.
And I don't know if there is or not, and I you assume that road, they've talked about it widening it for some time, so I'm sure there's an existing easement right there, but I'm not, there's not much room to work with that big tree there. And you're very close to the road. So you're either gonna have to cut in that driveway that goes back and then head over to behind the home somehow, if there's an easement there, and then pop back out at, I still think that we should use the inside the gate for Innisbrook and not outside the gate. It's safer. There's just not gonna be that many people on it that's gonna impose. And plus, we would end up being responsible for some of the maintenance that you currently have to do now, and you're basically cutting weeds over there. You know that, right?
We're working on the weeds.
So anyway, so we felt like there were some connectivity issues here, but if that was resolved, then that would connect into the, you'd walk the sidewalk, you'd go down Golden Bell, and then you'd hop on this preserve trail and the internal trail. So it would give connectivity to those neighbors who aren't going to be able to go around the other way to connect to the Joe Carr part of the loop.
Is anybody working on finding out from that White House?
This is, yes, we will. It will go on our list of something that one of us will work on.
To go in front?
in front
You
of
said
the,
White
in front of
House.
the White House that we've got to get from Preserve to Innisbrook. There's that little White House there.
It's not brick.
It's not white, it's red.
Isn't it brick?
Red brick.
Is it?
Yeah.
With a white roof?
I don't know where you're
There's
getting
a
white
white-
from.
I don't know.
Maybe there's a
Right
white
on
barn
the
in the
road.
Yeah, it's
back.
white on the road.
There's a white
I thought
one
it was
behind
brick.
it.
Is there a
It's
white,
white one
behind
behind it maybe.
No.
It's red, the one that's right up
Yeah.
against the road, that's red.
Oh,
Or orange. One of those two colors.
white roof?
Maybe some white
Maybe a
painting
white,
trim.
maybe a white garage.
It might be a white garage in the back or something.
Okay,
What you throwing me?
the house between the Preserve at Golden Bell
Yeah,
and
and Innisbrook, yes.
Are we working, so we're.
Well, so we
we're-
will
That
now-
is in the process, guys.
Yes, yes.
And there's a support beam, wires that are holding up the telephone there, pole. So it's just gonna be tricky how,
And there's that one little
It's just
section there
knock
that
on the
is
door, say, "Do you
never
mind if we just put a
mowed or
trail right
anything," and
through your front
I don't know
yard?
if that's utility or what.
Village would need to probably purchase that lot.
we tried to once
Yeah.
before, but,
Okay, so that was the next, so we put that next on the priority. Again, you all can move this around, but it doesn't mean, like, we'll be working on this one. We just thought that it was a little bit further down, especially since we didn't have the funding set aside for it yet. Tullamore Phase 3 Union County section. It would connect Tullamore and Amber Meadows if the easements are here, and then possibly connecting to the Ray Road property is what you said it could, that would go through into Union County. This is something that's been on the list. We haven't done.
Was
very
that
much
next
work
in
on
line?
it. No, well,
We
no.
just heard from the residents that
oh.
the portions that are done are being used, but people are being forced out onto the roads because they don't connect, and they just love to see them connected. So, and I think we could talk to the developer of the little project there next to the Lighthouse daycare to see if we could get maybe
Apartment complex.
an easement. Yeah, the apartment complex.
So
Well, no, I
all
think
coming
there's a little,
into-
It's like
there's something
medical.
before there. There's a little office retail going in.
Yeah.
Before the-
It's Novant now. They've got
Oh,
all
it's
that.
Novant?
Yeah, they bought that whole thing out. So,
Better than apartments.
Yeah, it's all built out. that
um,
particular property.
So we could, we could get it, maybe see about getting an easement there to put a little connectivity,
Mhm.
But I mean, you're almost to walking full trail to Blakeney at that point.
So, and you'll see as we go down the list kind of why these are up higher, because the ones like further down on the list are just that much further out from even being close to.
What
the
about
east.
some low-hanging fruit that needs, I don't see much, and I'm not just touting this, but I know it was on the list when Innisbrook was on the list, is you have across the street from Innisbrook is, they already have a road to it, they have the full trail, and we had talked about, and I don't know how it got stalled, but there is utilizing the cart path for Firethorn. So there's really not a lot of cost, you're just sharing a cart path with us, and we would take, I think we talked about taking liability and maintaining that small section, but there's not much, it's all concrete, it's all cement wide roads that,
I thought Firethorn didn't want that.
See, I don't.
well, I'm saying go back and revisit that, because I think it's, depending on who you talk to, they didn't even want a crossing path. They would rather you go on your own and risk, rather than actually having a crossing area, which, I mean, are we crossing over to Firethorn? I mean, the trail's in there for the other neighborhood to the left of Firethorn when you're looking at Firethorn. That's already said, it's already ready to come out onto the road. How we get across that road was debatable too.
Well, I mean, I was reviewing minutes from your guys' meetings in the late summer, fall, and I mean, you guys were talking about doing a flashy light and a slow down thing, and just.
Well, we can't change the speed, but we can put in potentially something
And
that,
there's reflector
Well-
on the ground and.
a lot of that was like high-tech stuff where you could technically put some sort of light in there that if you were going to cross, you hit a button and then that throws a flashing yellow light to just give caution both ways that something may be crossing the road. Otherwise, it's never on unless you're actually using the road. That's what I understand was being discussed, but because they can't reduce the speed necessarily on that road.
Well, they've done that across on a section of Providence Road, right there in front of the, I think it's Episcopal Church, right before you get to the Harris Teeter where Providence comes to Providence. There's a pedestrian light that goes across the street that is only triggered when somebody's getting ready to cross the street there.
Okay, well, I made a note to add that to the bottom to look at that.
Okay.
So then the next section you're in is the phase is sort of our priority 2 because they seem to be further out. And this was the 2 that are in blue. It's working on, and we don't even have any idea what the costs are, but working on the power line easement that goes from by the Marvin Ridge tennis courts back through behind the baseball field down to the power line and comes out by the Goodwill and Taco stand on Providence Road. We think based on what we saw, it's about 8,000 linear feet. We do have fee and lieu money from the courtyards that could be used towards that, because what we were thinking is if you've got the sidewalk in front of the courtyards and now you've got the NC-16 widening project that'll put sidewalks all down Providence Road, if this connector took you out to Providence Road, you know, they could walk down the sidewalk from courtyards and then get on the trail. So I assigned the fee and lieu money for that there, but honestly, we don't know what the cost is. Derek met with one of the new PRG members, and he's interested in looking into power line easements, right? And finding out what that would take.
I thought when we discussed that previously, they said something about the homeowners actually own the land to the power lines.
There are some instances of that. I think the run-ins that they've had previously are more so west of there, where like the Sedgefield neighborhood starts on Waxhaw Marvin, and then trying to
Going back from Waxhaw Marvin.
go east to the school. You know, there's a lot of landowners in there that are on the power line easement, and they in the past have been opposed to a trail being on their property. This one we're a little more optimistic about because it's not as many lots on it. And
But this one's not actually coming out to Waxhaw Marvin Road.
No, this is just going from the tennis courts east to Providence Road. And this is not even the right picture. I don't know why I'm pointing at it.
Look up to it. And I thought
I saw
that
tennis
was part
courts.
of they were trying to figure out how, contacting the homeowners or getting the easements, because the power company doesn't actually own the thing, they're on easement themselves, so it's.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it depends. I mean, in some cases, like in my neighborhood, I know the power line easements actually go through the common area. So if it's HOAs, they may not be opposed. I mean, I don't know where that one goes. If you think about where that is, it kind of goes back there behind Willow Creek and Walden Pond 4 and all. I mean, I don't know who owns that land back there.
I just thought I was concerned that they.
So that was on our list. I mean, like I said, we have fee and lieu money that's supposed to be used in the general vicinity of the neighborhood that gave us the money. And so this was from a plan of where that connectivity could go. Again, it's on priority 2, which is, in the 3 to 5, maybe even longer years, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But it's on the list so that we don't lose track of it. The next one was sort of something Derek and I were trying to figure out as we were sitting here, because we've got $20,000 of fee and lieu money from Barcroft. And so we were thinking about where you would use that money given what we knew about everything. So we were saying, well, if there's going to be a sidewalk on Providence Road, if you went from Barcroft past Barrington through the church, maybe you could make a sidewalk to get from there out to Providence Road. that was just an idea we had. Again, it's on the list because we wanted to make a placeholder for that money that needs to be used for some kind of project in the future, okay? The next two that are in green kind of go together. That's over here on Waxhaw Marvin Road. It would be on the west side, which is like our side, okay? And we've got fee and lieu money from Windmore, which is actually across the street, but we were thinking that, I think the idea was these were on the list already. The idea is that there'd be a sidewalk down Waxhaw Marvin Road, past Providence down south, and actually if you look at the next one, Broadmoor, connecting those areas down to the new town hall area. And there's fee and lieu money from Windmore that would be able to be used for that. And then there's fee and lieu money from Broadmoor, which we haven't collected yet, but I've got an email out to him asking where that money is. So we've got all that. And then then the next little section was just giving you an update on some projects that the developers are responsible for. Preserve 4 by Golden Bell Drive, that's the path right there in the front, which is done. The courtyards in front of that, which is done. And then the other thing on the list for the future was something in front of Marvin Gardens, which again was just a placeholder. And then after year 5, this is setting aside the money for the Providence Road widening, which we have some money in, the $29,000 that we need from that, we could take from unassigned and move into intersection and road improvements, or you could move it into loop and greenway expansion. We could set it aside somewhere, but we just need to remember that we need that.
But is that another, that project, correct me if I'm wrong, given what they're doing, and we're doing a minimum, is that something else that we have to pay up front and then we wait?
No, they
I thought
said
that was a 7, and once
we
it's
don't pay
done.
that till 2024.
Okay, so we got about 7 years. or
Right,
whatever.
right. It's just, again, it's on
6
this list so that we don't forget that we owe that money, and it says 2024. And then there were there were 2 other projects, the next 2 that were on the Trails and Greenways listing that we were working off of was NC-16 from Bonds Grove to Courtyards and NC-16 from Courtyards to Weddington Chase, but we think both of those are now covered by this NC-16 project, so.
And,
And then the ones on the bottom are just like way out.
okay, so there is, under those, there are power lines that connect, is it south of that age-restricted development? Or is it north, the power lines?
North
It's just north?
of the courtyards?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's north, it's just north of,
It's like Farrell Farms and Willow Oak and Walden Pond. It's like right, if you're going toward Waxhaw, it's like
Yeah.
right past
Just
that.
past-
It's right here with a Goodwill
Where the
drop
Goodwill-
off.
Okay, so, do we have, because I read that letter that was just sent and I forwarded to everyone, I think it was sent to you if I'm correct, but then I blind copied council. I'm not sure I understand it, and I don't know if any of you do, but does it mean we could potentially be on the hook for more? Because it sounds like they only want to do like, why wouldn't you stripe, you're telling me they're gonna do bike lanes for both ways on one side of the street? That's crazy. I mean, if you think about large bicyclists running down a road and they're having bike lane pass and another set of cyclists coming the other way, that's what it implied to me when I read it, but I didn't read it that closely because I kind of was in a bit of a hurry. But I think we need to circle back to, as he said in the email, that there should be a lot of questions, and there will be.
I was
But
saying they want us to do the multi-use path on the one side, and we won't have to pay for the easement acquisition, because it'll be part, from the, not having the bike lane, that'll make up for the easeway access.
yeah,
So it won't have to be any cost to us for,
I just wasn't. I mean, it's almost like
except for the
all right.
5-foot thing, I don't know.
Yeah,
I was-
it was okay. So just so we're clear that nobody really truly understands that, and that may be brought up at the next locals here at TPO, or just a phone call to Bjorn, if he even understands it, so. But I'll see him tomorrow, actually, my coach's daughter.
So I guess, to wrap up the discussion of Greenway and Trails plan, in general, are you okay with the plan the way Derek and I have kind of laid this out for years? And I guess the couple of questions would be, or do you want to think about it and give us, have us bring it back up in March? But I guess we kind of need direction as to what we ought to be guiding for the next steps, like
Right.
where we should be looking at contracting. And,
PRG was curious,
and they
they
want
want to make sure that their visions are lining up with your visions, and, they're not just wasting their time.
Well, I think it makes sense, and this is the opinion of one, it makes sense as priority one would be this right behind us. To let's get that done. I'm assuming the money's there and stuff. As we get into other phases and stuff, as you know, it can become political. Where it's like, oh, you're taking care of your neighborhood to have access, or my neighborhood, or something like that. So I don't know how we set these as a priority, because here we have a brand new neighborhood just in there that we took and we upgraded to a very nice trail. And now, of course, they're saying, well, finish it. And we're like, well, there's other neighborhoods that have been paying taxes for a lot longer. And how do you create that hierarchy? I'm not saying any of this is wrong. I'm concerned about, I know there's someone in your neighborhood, for instance, Kim, that has said, he told me 4 years ago, just get our loop finished. And that's all he wanted. He said, it's just not that easy. But why does Tullamore completion? Yeah, they added a dead end and stuff, and they go out on the road, but I mean, there's a lot of other older neighborhoods that need connectivity, so we just got to be mindful of that, I think. And I don't know the answer to how you
Do them all at the same time.
and just strike a check.
Yeah.
As long as we have the money, right? If we have the money, I'm all for
Well-
it. I mean, it's like if the money is there and we're comfortable after I'm all for it if you get it, but I don't know if we have the money.
Well, we have money set aside in the Loop and Greenway fund balance assignment account. And so there is money there that we could move in. And then, I guess we just need to figure out what some of the costs are that we don't know what they are, and then plug those in, and then you can kind of decide. And then we can come back to you with that. Based on the pricing that we're getting, we probably do have the money set aside to do
Okay.
those projects.
Why don't you rank them by which ones are the oldest up to the newest? And then develop your cost and
You could
figure out which
do
ones
that,
are
but then
way.
you could argue, says, okay, some of the oldest they don't even want it in there, but there's a plan to sort of how to connect it, and they're like, no, these are private roads, we don't want you to.
But then you have a ranking system on how you're looking at it, and then whoever
And that
doesn't
would
need
put
it right
Tullamore
away.
way down on the list because they're brand new.
Well,
And it is what it is, but-
exactly.
yeah.
You just have to map yourself out a plan and then put a priority to it. And then once you have a plan in
Right.
place, you can do it.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess
the road
only-
to nowhere.
I guess the only thing is we've sort of ranked them based on, one, what we had been hearing over the years and what had been on these schedules, and two, what was kind of like we were in more of a position to move forward to, because we have the easements, we know what's involved, we know what the costs are, so we know that we can complete these, and let's go ahead and make complete sections, as opposed to some of the other ones which are gonna take more effort to, because there's more easements involved,
Right.
there's more research, there's more work involved in getting those done.
And if you get pushback from a neighborhood like mine, then you say, look, okay, you just went down to the bottom of the list.
The problem with some of them is, and I agree with you, but they've also, that's been the reasoning for the last 6 or 7 or 8 years, and we've never moved forward. We're not moving any further along. We're not trying to get them easements. We haven't been going out and, we keep saying it's gonna be hard to do, it's gonna be, but
We haven't done
we
anything
haven't
about
done
it.
anything to say that we've
Yeah.
done it,
Well, I think the priority ones that we have, here above in the white sections, the priority ones, I think if you look at the timing, we're thinking that we would be doing those over the next, or spring, fall, winter 2018. We'd be trying to
Yeah.
get those done in
Unfortunately, I
the
think
next
that's
9 months.
that's what's happened. It's, we've had these ones here, planned for
For a
years.
while.
And something new comes and we have all the things, oh, well, this is be a quick one, we'll do this one, and we forget about that, and then the next one comes and then they just never get done.
So now we have Derek though, and he's been moving things forward
Well,
because
no,
he-
yeah, I'm just saying,
Right.
where you have people that have been
Yes.
asking for 5 years, where's my loop, where's my,
But
but,
Well, that was my only comment on it, but I'm for anything that's progress and seeing getting
Well,
things
yeah,
done like that is just
my first
terrific.
priority is, I would say, the town hall,
Yeah. Yeah,
that would be,
Okay,
Probably
above
something.
Amber Meadows rebuild,
I think we could probably do it
or
at the
do
same
them
time.
simultaneously?
Yeah.
I mean, that would be my preference, because I think we can hopefully go to the developer and get them to.
so my guess is there's gonna be that mulch is gonna be pushed off the side, or they're gonna remove all of that.
We're gonna have to remove it all.
I think it will be
And pushed it off to one side,
Yeah.
okay, and then create that trail that we want to do there, okay. Well, I mean, I'm just curious, cause
Cross our
Anyway,
fingers that
yeah,
Pulte will help.
yeah, okay.
Okay, so we will find out about those easements.
So when are we meeting with you guys? The PRNG?
I think we're in
April work
Oh, that's
session?
far out, okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Well, because we've got March next and then April, so we're not that far off. We're at the end of
Yeah.
February, people.
I know,
Um,
running out of meetings.
I guess the one last question I have is, given the fact that we had this plan from the engineer to do some repairs on the loop, are you all okay if we revisit that and make sure that there's no safety issues on the paved
Absolutely.
sections of the loop that we should be addressing since the money is there to pay for
Oh,
it?
yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean,
so-
we didn't talk about putting this company on a contract. I mean,
Well, I'll find out whether
What
they would
that-
do it, what it would
That
entail,
would be great.
and then I can bring it to you at the next meeting, but at least I
I
could.
mean, you had an estimate of 12,000 a year or whatever, right? I think that's what it said.
I think we threw that in there,
Yeah.
based on previous,
I
yeah.
mean, I think that makes a lot of
That makes
sense
a
to
lot of
find
sense.
out, and then they are professionals who can address it and look at it and see what needs to be done, instead of us trying to go out there and walk it and be like,
Right.
well, I don't know, what do you think?
Right, okay. Right, that sounds good.
All right, we good?
Thank you.
Thanks
All
for-
right, look at this. Item number 15, council comments. We are almost at the, I expected to take about an hour for these, so a lot to say. You're not happening? Yeah, okay. Well, then I'll let you go first. I don't want to go first, because
I don't want to go first.
I'll go for it.
You wanna
Okay,
go first?
Nick. You go first, Nick.
All right. First, I want to thank our staff for putting together everything for us and having all this set up and do all the work they did to get everything ready for us. Chris, Barbie, and Clara, and well, I guess Julie, everybody that chipped in that isn't here, and Melanie for making herself available this morning. I'm a little disappointed that we didn't have a full council. I mean, I think it's, this was a good meeting. I think we went over, some things, accomplished some things, I was hoping we could start off anew, but I guess we'll have to work from where we are. And I guess that's about it.
I ditto about staff. You guys did a great job. We appreciate all the hard work that you did, putting all of this information together and helping walk us all through it. It was super helpful. You guys made it really easy, so thank you. And I think we made some really good progress today. I think we talked about some really important stuff to move the business of the village forward, and really start putting some attainable goals out there, start knocking some stuff off of our list of things that we want to get accomplished. So I hope that that will continue. And I think it was a really productive day, so thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Kim and Aaron. First, I'd just like to point out, we are ahead of schedule until I'm done.
Come on.
But I'm very excited about that we were able to stay on task and stuff. Thank you, every one of the staff that were involved in putting this together, Barbie, Chris, anyone, Laura, even, obviously Derek, who showed up for meetings to kind of fill us in where we need to be filled in. It means a lot because we know you're going above and beyond, so we got you. I did want to finish my thought on the Weddington food truck thing that I realized I never finished. The reason I don't think it's as successful is because they have it at their Weddington Town Hall. And if you've ever been to Weddington Town Hall, if there's more than 10 people going, there's no parking. So I think it doesn't do well because there's nowhere to park. And that's where I was leading to with the potential with that. So just to think on that. I agree with Nick. It's very unfortunate that the two councilmen, Epps and Salameo, did not attend. It was on their schedule. It's unfortunate that they either took their own bad advice or were given bad advice by someone else, because we had an attorney that clearly said that this meeting was a legitimate meeting and we did all the right things that we needed to do. And for them to not, when it was blocked off for their whole day, to not attend is unfortunate, and it speaks volumes to me going forward. If they want to participate in this town and what happens, I expect them, and I also would not want any of staff taking up any time of what was discussed here. This has all been taped. They can go to the tapes and listen to everything that was discussed, because I don't think it should take any of staff time, in my view, of what was discussed. They can hear it on the recording. And then finally, I'm extremely excited about what we've talked about, what the actions we've taken, as well as the trails. Because I think I think you've said this before, Nick, is if you ask if people want a town hall or trails, I think trails would be higher on the list before they want a town hall. But maybe we can do both, and the fact that we're actually putting together a plan that we can work off is very exciting for me, and any progress like that. And of course, what we're seeing taking place with the roundabouts is going to let people know that even though we had to take a few steps back with staffing over the last number of months, I think we are certainly headed in the right direction, and we've got the people around us to support that. So I thank you again very much, and with that, I will ask for a request to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I got time to spare.
Wait, can you sign that? Wait, do you want to sign that?
Can we say something?
Do you want to be signed?
Yeah.
Use this one, I don't think that one's writing very well.